What's going on, Philadelphia? Welcome on into today's edition of PHLY Union Podcast. Your Philadelphia Union are heading down to Nashville, so we're going to discuss and we're going to preview this matchup here. And, of course, I am JP Zapata, one half of your host, joined as always with the lovely Renee Washington. Renee, you ready for some Nashville here?
I'm ready for Nashville. It's always an exciting matchup, and I'm excited to be able to dive a little deeper into previewing what to expect this weekend.
Absolutely. Should be a lot of fun down in the Music City, as they call it. But, of course, guys, listen, we cover the Union. We don't cover Nashville. So we're going to give you eyes from the other side. So without further ado, please welcome back a dear friend of the show, Mr. Wes Boling. Wes, what's going on? Welcome on into the show. How we feeling?
Not a lot. I'm traveling up in Canada, actually. So
Wow.
For once further north than you guys, but Nashville not further north of Philadelphia in the standings right now. So good to talk to you and preview a good match. You mentioned the Music City. Look, the theme of the match last year was anything but harmonious. There was some dissonance down in Nashville the last time these teams met. So looking forward to another good one.
What are you hanging out the Shufflebird?
Wes, are you a big poutine person?
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, the more cheese curds, the better. I don't know what it is, and I don't know if you guys are fortunate enough in the Northeast to have good cheese curds. In Nashville, we can't get them. We just can't. So I guess that's why hot chicken's our thing. But up here in Quebec, where I am, you can't beat a good cheese curd and gravy and fries. Man, it's great.
Wow.
I actually don't like cheese.
Now I'm hungry.
So, yeah, I was going to say, JP's hungry. I'm kind of grossed out because I don't like cheese. So the idea of cheese curds literally made me a little grossed out. But it's fine because I hear poutines are
very good.
Renee always gives me the cheese, so it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, you get all the cheese. Exactly.
All right, Wes. Well, let's dive into this matchup. But, of course, we want to know about Nashville Soccer Club here. It's been interesting so far for you guys. 1-4-1. So the Drawing Kings remains the title of Nashville Soccer Club. One thing that I was interested in, though, now, obviously, one thing that everyone knows about Philly Nashville is defensively we're always strong and we're always structured, right? This year, though, you guys are -4 in the goal differential. You've allowed 11 goals. So I was a little bit surprised. Obviously, we need to keep in mind Walker Zimmerman, one of the best in the league, has been out for you guys as well. But overall, Wes, I want to start off with that. I mean, obviously, that's been the identity of Nashville since you guys arrived in the league. What's been going on with Nashville, especially with that defense?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. And I think you touched on the key cause of it is Walker being out. But, giving up 11 goals so far this season, that's a negative. Giving up franchise record 5 goals on the road at LAFC. But if you were to scratch out that LAFC loss and say, look, late night, bad night at LAFC, not the first to go to BMO Field and struggle, you still have to look at a 2-1 lead over Columbus squandered, a 2-0 lead over Galaxy squandered. In CCL, which, by the way, I'll forever call it CCL, they went up 2-0 on Messi and Suarez. Look, no shame in conceding a couple times there, but nonetheless, it adds to the tally. And so I think you're right that Nashville's no strangers to draws. Fittingly, they tied the draws record back in 2021. But I think the 1-1 draws were more common. The scoreless draws would happen occasionally. This year, it's been about 2-2 draws, which has already happened 3 times. And they were fortunate to get a 1-1 draw in Colorado. And so, the other issue I have is, yes, Walker Zimmerman is out, but and he's a DP, and that's, you respect that. That's an important role on the team. But you need to be solid and stable enough to do what Philadelphia can do, to be able to rotate, to be able to deal with injuries and still grind out results. And for its first 4 years of its history, Nashville was really good at doing that. And this year, there are some question marks around that so far.
Yeah, it's interesting because at least you guys, I mean, you're scoring goals. These aren't 0-0 draws. And I know that's something JP and I spoke about. I feel like a 0-0 tie in soccer is just sometimes chopped up to couldn't score all around the net, couldn't finish. But you look at even that recent result, that 2-2 tie against defending champs Columbus Crew. And as you mentioned, it's a matter of getting the lead sometimes but not being able to hold on to it. What is it about this group? What's missing? What's going on behind the scenes that you feel like is keeping them from turning some of these ties into wins?
That's the question. And I think that's the question that Gary Smith and the technical staff are trying to answer in the offices this week, getting ready for this really good Philadelphia team. I think injuries are part of it. And we mentioned Walker, of course. Joe Willis earned a red card against LAFC. And so starting keeper was out. Elliot Panico, a very capable replacement, but found himself out of position once or twice. And Those resulted in 1 or 2 goals for Crew. But Nashville also was missing Shaq Moore, who will be missing again. Julian Carranza's boxing partner in Nashville a year ago. It looks like he will likely be out this weekend as well. That's my speculation, nothing official from the club. So one part of it is that they are depleted. The second part is that historically, I mean, in soccer in general, but especially in Nashville, it seems when the match opens up, then Nashville's more vulnerable on the back end. And that's just basic soccer 101, I guess, right? That you guys know, that everybody listening knows, but it seems amplified in Nashville for whatever reason. I think part of that reason is that Nashville's so used to sitting, pressing in the mid block and bunkering when they need to and countering, that when they try to open up their own patterns of play with a roster that's been heavily rotated by injury, patterns aren't always there. The giveaways happen and the other team can race the other direction. You look at Columbus's equalizing goal, and it came off a counterattack, which it was giving Nashville a bit of its own medicine. And so I think that's also part of the struggle, is that Nashville understands it has to play a little more wide open than it's comfortable doing. That's the backs on islands. And so far, Jack Mayer, who has shown to be a very bright talent in his 5th year in the league, Nashville's first ever draft pick, drafted ahead of Daryl Dike. He's not had the season yet that he would like to have had. Probably his worst start in those 5 years. And he needs to play better, and the center backs need to play better. But when you have started 6 different players at center backs 6 games into the season, it doesn't bode very well for what you're looking to do this year.
Yikes.
Darn it, Wes. I was really looking forward to Shaq versus Julian part 2.
I know. It still could happen. I don't know that he's out. It just seemed like he was a ways away when Gary Smith talked about him last week and he missed the Columbus match. I was looking forward to that, though, too.
Did Gary talk at all about a potential timetable for Walker Zimmerman for you guys?
I don't think it's going to be incredibly long.
Okay.
I don't have full information on that, but I think they were optimistic that this was going to be a 3 to 4 week deal. And he got hurt. It was, I believe, the Charlotte match, if I'm not mistaken, and that was 3 weeks ago this weekend. So I think it is a situation where we should see him again in gold pretty soon. And boy, Nashville's going to be counting the minutes. And Walker's the type of player, by the way, who, if he is 40%, he's going to tell you he's 90 just so he can get on the field. They have to protect him from himself. So even if he does play, for instance, maybe against Philadelphia, you could see him probably ease his way in with 45 minutes or 60 or coming in the second half just so the staff protects him for a really important stretch of games ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So listen, I don't want to paint this picture too much for you because it's not very pretty. But look, this isn't the Union attack that's scoring 6 or 7 goals, right, Wes? But listen, it does feel like they're starting to catch some wind here over these past 2 matches. They've looked much more crisper here. So we just discussed your defense. If you are in the position of Gary Smith, like, how do you contain this attacking 3 of Gaza, Carranza, and Ua?
That's the problem, right? There's not one player to focus on. And the way that Gazdag helps build and synchronize the attack, he doesn't insist on doing it himself. Just 5 shots this year and 3 goals in that. He's a killer, right? He's so efficient. But then with Ua and Carranza, I'm just kind of repeating after you right now, because I think there is such versatility there. But what I love about Philadelphia too, and what's going to present such a challenge to Gary Smith, is that they work so well within that system. There were questions after those first 3 matches. I'm sure you guys were asking these questions of, did Jim Curtin, did this front office keep the core together a year too long, and is it stale? And then they go to Portland and win 3-1 right after just a really disappointing night in Pachuca. They come back and they beat Minnesota at home, a really exciting Minnesota team. And you're thinking, okay, it's the system. The same thing that folks thought might be a disadvantage, bringing back that core, is an advantage because these guys know how to play within their system. How do you stop them? I think Gary Smith probably lines up in a 4-4-2 and tries to win on individual skill and says, look, this team's probably going to score on us. All things equal, we hope that Hani Mukhtar is the best player on the pitch and that Sam Surridge is the second best player on the pitch in a given night. I think that we could have pointed to a scoreless draw as a possibility a lot of times between these teams. It's happened before. It happened in Philly up in 21. I don't see that happening at Geodis Park. And I think that Gary Smith is preaching 2 things. Number 1, match the shape and win your individual duels, which Philadelphia's topped in the league, and those 50-50s won't be easy. But also, let good players do good things. And I don't think Nashville can afford to close this match down. They need to be playing for wins right now and not draws. And so I think whoever wins probably wins by a 2-1 or 3-1 or maybe a 3-2 type of scoreline, because these are 2 attacks who have not been hesitant this year, not been tentative, which again, makes Gary Smith a little bit uncomfortable sometimes, but doesn't make Jim Curtin uncomfortable when he has the 3 attackers that he has.
I think one of the things I'm excited about with this matchup, it's still so early in the season. You have Nashville, although you haven't been getting the results you want, but you still look, you've tied LA Galaxy, who's top in the West. You've had a close game. Obviously, you played Inter Miami a couple times now. We know they're also top in the conference. You're playing good teams. You're also playing a lot of games, as with the Union, that was the same struggle of that stretch of ties. And a large part was because of just having to play too much too soon. And I know JP and I talked about this earlier this week. It feels as though this is the Union team that we can expect. You know, when you have one game per week, one MLS game to focus on, this is the team that we can expect to see day in and day out. This is their true identity. And the movement was better. The opportunities they created was better. And I feel like Nashville is kind of in that same boat as well. And I know before, even when we spoke, there's a lot of similarities between these two teams, how they look to play, the fundamentals and foundation of their club. And so I kind of feel like that's what makes this matchup so exciting. It's still so early. Record aside, there's still not a lot you can truly tell from either of these teams as to where they're going to stack up as the season progresses. But ties are at least a point. I mean, as we know, it's such a competitive league. At least they're squeezing out draws versus dropping losses. And so they're still getting results, much like with the Union, frustrating or not to have so many ties, they're still getting those results. So I don't know what you guys have heard on your end about the matchup, but I think for me, you know, looking outside bigger picture, this is a really big test. It's two teams that have notoriously been so consistent in league play, have obviously goal scorers and pieces, even injuries aside. I know the Union are still dealing with it. We're still going to wait to hear officially about Andre Blake, about different player status, major key players, Andre Blake especially, that you're unsure about. Obviously, you know, as we're talking through with Zimmerman, it's the same thing. So that's part of the process too, is dealing with major injuries and the longevity of this season. So personally, I'm looking forward to seeing, okay, what do these two teams have? They have history. There's a growing rivalry there. There's also two teams that are anxious to get 3 points. So I don't know what you guys have even heard regarding the Philadelphia Union coming into this weekend matchup.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm curious.
Well, I'm really interested to one day over a drink sit down with Nashville SC GM Mike Jacobs and ask, look, who's the one club you modeled yourselves after? And I know there's never going to be just one, but if there's one primary, who would it be? I think it has to be Philadelphia. And fast forwarding Philadelphia to year 4 or 5 of its history and saying that is the type of club we want to be. You know, lower payroll, extremely physical, getting the most out of a diverse attack and steely defenders, a core that you spend a lot of unsexy GAM to keep together, right? Because it costs a lot to keep a core together as guys get raises and want new contracts. Very good job at cherry picking international acquisitions that, again, aren't going to lead the league in salary, but are extremely effective. I think that is what I point to as what Nashville needs to be and wants to be. They can't look at Atlanta or LAFC. There's too much money spent. You don't want to look at Cincinnati. I mean, they're doing great now, but what a wreck that was. I mean, Cincinnati looked at Philadelphia, right? They brought everybody over, everybody shy of Jim Curtin, who they couldn't quite get over there, and said, just make Philadelphia 2.0 over here. And it's working out really well. I think that's what's so interesting to me every time these clubs play. And it's why Nashville had a chance to make such a statement in its second year of existence in penalty kicks. And I think 2 of those are still floating in the Delaware River. Didn't quite work out, but Nashville took Philadelphia to an inch of its life there in that great playoff match in 2021. And so, you know, I look at a Nashville team that was 2 pretty clear-cut misses away from beating Columbus, despite enduring a CCL grind for the first time. But then you look at what Philadelphia did, again, on the backs of CCL. They rotate that squad pretty heavily. They get a draw. Then they go to Portland right after that Pachuca loss. And I didn't play a single Philly player in my fantasy team that week. I don't know about you guys. It was like, take a week off from Gazdag and Blake and all those. And they win 3-1 at a pretty good Portland team. And I think that's the next step for Nashville, again, is to develop the kind of a team where you have the depth, you have the mentality to get beat. Was it 5-6-0? I won't remind you guys in Pachuca, but then you turn around and get back to league play and you reset and you wipe it from your minds, or you use it as motivation rather than as a distraction. And Nashville's not there yet. And nor would you expect them to be. I think they might have made CCL a year too soon, if I'm being honest with you. Miami matchup was a lot of fun. I think there were a couple of calls from the referees and a couple of missed chances from Nashville that changed that series. There's an injury or two as well. But now the biggest question they have is, look, you almost beat the league champs after your worst early stretch in your history. And now an even better club over the past 5 years is coming to town, and you didn't beat the league champ. So you got to get 3 here. And I think that's what's so interesting to me is this is typically a match decided by 1 goal or a draw between these two teams. Last time there were 3 red cards. These guys want it. They both want it so badly. Philadelphia has gotten its act together, and this is a chance, guys, for Nashville to show that it has its act together too. Down 5 or 6 starters again, probably it's not going to be easy, but I'm really intrigued to see how the club that I think wants to emulate Philly in many ways on and off the pitch can do against Philly in a really important match where they can't afford to let the Eastern Conference standings slip away from them.
Absolutely. Those are really good points there, guys. So let's focus on the attack of Nashville here, Wes. And so when I always think of Nashville, I feel like you guys are always solid at every level. I just feel like you guys are just like that forward, that striker, that killer up top that'll put you guys to that next level. We've talked about Sam Surridge before. 1 goal in 4 matches. The stat line's not always the story, right? But what have you seen from Surridge early on the season?
Yeah, my co-host on the Club and Country podcast, Tim Sullivan, said this week it's like he's genetically programmed to play big dumb football in all the best ways, like English style, hold up play, get in the box, poach some headers, set pieces. He is more than any other striker in Nashville SC's 5-year history now. He's engineered to play in this Nashville attack. I followed Forest for a bit there in the championship when they got promoted to the Premier League, and Surridge was a key player in that. He came in and did most of his work scoring goals on the counterattack against teams that led possession. And so even tactically, he's used to being in situations that Nashville is often in. I like Surridge a lot. I'm on record as saying I think he's probably got a 10-goal season in him this year. Just 1 this year, but looks really bright in CCL as well, whether against a Mocha team that was outmatched from the Dominican Republic, well, then he was hurt after that. So he looked bright in that 1 match, but he's looked good in league play. And I think he is a key against a Philadelphia team, again, that's going to challenge you in the air. He is great in the air. I think what Nashville needs to probably do is play him further back in the formation into the midfield along with Hani Mukhtar and let him win the 50-50s and spring Hani loose. And then if Nashville starts Jacob Schaffelberg on the left wing, who's looked really good for Canada and really good for Nashville SC, 2 assists against Columbus, then you have that other speedster on the wing. I think that the key for Nashville's forwards, as with most teams, it's not individual brilliance, it's the service. Sam Surridge is not going to go on a 40-yard run and score a Galazzo and make your center back break his ankles in the process. It's not his game. Hani Mukhtar will. And so Hani needs to be the carrier. Jacob Schaffelberg, and then Drew Yearwood is the other key, I think, in this match for Nashville SC. Comes over from Red Bulls, one of 3 Nashville players currently on the roster, 4 if you include Dax McCarty in the recent past, who have come over from Red Bulls at some point in their careers. Look, Nashville's not trying to be Red Bulls, but they want those guys who can win those aerial duels and those 50-50 battles and then be really good at working the ball forward directly. And I think that's going to be the key for Nashville against Philadelphia, rather than a moment of individual brilliance from Sam Surridge. I think if he scores a goal against Philly, it's an ugly header. It's a 4-footer as Blake maybe goes down because of pressure from other people, and he's going to be just fine. The uglier, the better as far as he's concerned, and that may be what Nashville needs to do.
Interesting. As watching the Union in their last 2 wins, a big game changer was scoring first and then staying on the front foot, staying aggressive, putting the game away, keeping control of the game, and not allowing Portland, not allowing, for both games for Minnesota to work themselves back into it. To keep with that same aggression, intensity, the ball movement, creating opportunities. And I'm curious because I know you mentioned your predictions as we get ready to wrap up a little bit soon. Your predictions on the score being like a 1-goal game, a 3-2, a 2-1 game. And personally, I could see that. I always say every week, I feel like, and JP, I'm sure you agree, every week I'm like, I don't know. We can get 1-0, we can get 0-0, we can get like 3-0. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen because obviously the MLS in general is so wide open on any given day. You can get any result. It's not very easy to predict. But I'm actually curious, as you kind of touched on some different factors for Nashville, what do you think is going to be the difference in who wins this game this weekend? What do you think ultimately is going to be the game changer? Because we've seen in the past, it's been restarts, which typically is big. It's been who can capitalize on mistakes, who is going to be able to create more of just even aggression getting forward, not even just opportunities, but aggression getting forward. What do you think is ultimately going to be the difference, especially if it's going to be, in your eyes, a 1-goal game? It's probably going to come down to one major deciding factor ultimately between whether it's the Union or Nashville walking away with 3 points.
Yeah, I'll give you two. I already kind of mentioned one, which is those 50-50 duels, which, again, Philadelphia elite always has been. That's the game they want to play. Win the ball, send it forward to that brilliant attacking group. Jose Martinez, that he's the template, right, for what you guys love to do in midfield. But I think the other piece of it is, where is the rest of the match played? If there are car crashes in midfield, can Nashville expand that field and stretch the shuttlers for Philadelphia and test those fullbacks then, which pins the fullbacks back? That was redundant. But getting Jacob Schaffelberg out wide, I think he's maybe the key weapon, the key player for Nashville here. Because if he can spring on the counter when those duels are won from Nashville in midfield, then all of a sudden he gets Philadelphia stretched, and you've got room in the middle of the pitch for Hani Mukhtar to operate. Another key, I think, for Nashville's personnel related, and it is Tyler Boyd. Is he available? A great acquisition brought in from LA Galaxy, led that team last year in assists, and he was out for Columbus. But he's the type of player who can play on the outside. He can play on the wing, which is where he'll line up when they kick the ball off. But also he can tuck inside and let, again, typically Shaq Moore, if he's available, get high up the pitch at the fullback spot. So once again, you're using a player, even by playing narrow, who can then widen the pitch and get the fullbacks involved. So number one, I think the team who wins the 50-50 duel battle has a great chance of a 70% chance of winning, probably. Number two then is, can Nashville stretch this Philadelphia team, or will Union allow things to stay tight in midfield? And I think if it's a car crash match in midfield, and then Philadelphia is able to play through the middle and use the brilliance of Gazdag to send those through balls into Carranza and Ura, it's going to be a long night for Nashville. That's a 2-1 Philadelphia result with a Nashville counter. But if Nashville can stretch the wings, stretch the pitch, I think it can do what it's been aspiring to do for the longest time, which is finally build through the middle. And then I think that looks like maybe a 2-1 Nashville win.
Interesting. All right. JP, I'm curious your thoughts on that too before you answer. Before you go into your next thought.
No, I honestly wanted to go off of Wes, because the fullback battles is really intriguing to me. Because when you're talking Mule versus Wagner, and then on the other side, Schaffelberg, possibly, I'm assuming Harrio's going to start on the other side. It's going to be really fun. But I really want to see our shuttlers get tested. I think this is going to be the perfect test for both Quinn and Jack. We're both young midfielders who've had a great start to the season. And listen, you talked about it. Nashville's extremely physical, especially in midfield. I'm extremely excited to just see that battle in general with our midfields.
It's so interesting. And I wish I could tell you who would even start for Nashville in midfield right now. Sean Davis is a guy brought in from, you guessed it, New York Red Bulls, like everybody else. He's not quite been the fit yet for Nashville. And so Drew Yearwood was brought in from Red Bulls. God, this is so redundant. And he's shown himself to be really effective at winning the ball and sending it forward. Whereas Dax McCarty's brilliance was sending it forward, and Sean Davis's and Anibal Godoy's are winning the ball. He's a two-way player. I think the ideal kind of number 8 for this system. He's another key. I'm naming every player now as the key player in this match. But I think he's really important in that midfield, because Yearwood is also pretty young, but he has incredible technical skill. He takes chances too. And so you take a chance, you win the ball, that's great. You take a chance, you go studs up, you get a red card, and we're keeping that red card streak alive between Nashville and Philadelphia at Jonas Park. So it's really going to be interesting to see. And then, I know in a match like this, when you're probably playing dueling 4-4-2s would be my guess again for Nashville. It's about individual battles, but it's also about that cat and mouse game between the fullbacks and the wings. And there's nobody faster in this league than Jacob Schaffelberg. If there is one, it's hard to find it. And so again, I'm really interested in the battle of him versus Harriel. Harriel, a young and extraordinarily talented player, but I believe Gary Smith will look at that matchup and say, look, Harriel's really talented, but I think we can get at him pretty well. And so, again, the question, will Nashville do that on the counter? Will they try to attack and initiate some patterns of play? I think it probably comes on the counter after winning some of those 50-50s from Drew Yearwood.
It is interesting because, as you're jokingly saying, you're kind of finding yourself running through the entire roster. And partly why I asked that question is because, in my opinion, with the way these teams are constructed, it is so important to have everybody get going early, get them touches, get them feeling confident, like the Nate Harriels, Jack McGlynn's, Jose Martinez, on both sides of the ball, Kai Wagner on one side, Nate on the other side, getting Quinn going. I think for the Philadelphia Union specifically, when they're at their best is when you do feel everybody's winning their individual matchups, as you're talking about, winning those individual, whether it's 50-50s or just controlling the tempo in their area. And then now having the confidence to go, having the confidence to take players on 1v1, having the confidence to combine and get forward. So I also agree in the sense that I think it's because these are both teams that are constructed based off like team wins, team play, not just one or two guys lifting and being that superstar that's carrying the squad. You have Hani, you have Julian, but ultimately it's going to be who can get the entire team, the chemistry, the confidence, they're gelling, they're rolling, they're competing, they're playing aggressive. And I think that is what's going to make the difference, because I do also agree this should be a close game. If it's anything more than like a 2-goal game, I will be either direction completely surprised. But it's April, and it's April in the season. I have no idea what to expect from any team, but I could see this being ultimately like a 1-0, 2-1 game as well.
My real question for you guys is, what's your over-under on the number of yellow cards in this match? Last time these teams played in Nashville, we saw 8 yellow cards. 6 of them went to Nashville. That's the fun part for me, is that I think this is going to be a game where both teams, whoever wins is going to be angry. Whoever loses is going to be angry because they're going to be a little bit beat up in this one.
El Brewer is definitely a factor for that.
Oh yeah.
No doubt.
I can account for, there's at least 2 or 3 names, starting with Jose Martinez for the Union, that's absolutely getting a yellow card. Julian's probably getting a card. And then between Kai and Nate, one of them is getting a yellow card for the Union. There's 3.
That's the crazy thing is, I mentioned those 8 yellow cards. Jose wasn't even in the 18 when they played last time. So, adding him to the mix, absolutely.
There's 9.
Absolutely.
That's going to happen.
It's coming. I don't know if we're going to see a boxing match this time, but you know what? That wouldn't surprise me either.
Absolutely. We always know that Philly and Nashville is always going to be a lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun also talking to Wes Boling. Wes, before we head out, let the people know where they can find your great work, my friend.
Yeah, so on Twitter, you can find me at Wes Boling TN. That's the sport without the W. So BOLING, Wes Boling TN. But more importantly, follow the Club and Country podcast. You can follow us on Club Country USA. Tim Sullivan, my co-host, has written about Nashville SC for 7 years. I've written about them for 6.9 or talked about them. That was the former play-by-play guy on radio before work, caused me to have to move on from that. So we talk a lot of Nashville SC, but we have a keen eye on the rest of the league as well. And love this crazy, wonderful, stupid league.
That's for sure. And of course, we will be discussing this matchup next week. So make sure you guys are hitting that like button. We really appreciate that, and subscribing here at PHLY Sports for all your PHLY uni content here. For Wes Boling, that is Renee Washington. I go by the name of JP Zapata, and we will talk to you guys at the next one.